mighty giants, with a technology so advanced that the modern world cannot comprehend it. A city like no other and the first of its kind. How far can your imagination go? Do you find it believable? Where is the city, you ask? Well, in the middle of the endless expanse of the Pacific Ocean, off the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, there is a megalithic site that is the only ancient city to ever be built on a coral reef. The site has been a breeding ground for legends for centuries, but despite its status, many have never heard the name Nan Madol. Given how remote the Micronesian island of Pohnpei is, there may be a good explanation for this. More than 5,000 miles of open sea lie off the island's east coast until you reach California, and another 2,500 miles of open sea separate you from Manila, Philippines in the west. The island itself is small and almost insignificant, with a mere 13 miles of inhospitable terrain from end to end, covered in thick jungles and mangrove swamps, with a steep mountain rising in the middle. A feat of engineering, Nan Madol is made up of almost 100 stone and coral-filled platform perched atop man-made islands and divided by slender channels protected by an outer seawall. Despite the enormity of building the city, no record exists as to the exact time it was built, the origin of the enormous rocks, how they were transported there, and why it is built on top of a reef. So the question that hangs in the air is, who could have built such a thing? In the shallow waters off its eastern shore stands a stone complex of 92 artificial inlets built on top of a coral reef over an area that is a mile long and is all linked by an elaborate network of stone-lined canals. The stone canal is the reason for the name Nan Madol, which translates to within the interval. In more modern times, Nan Madol was named something different, namely the Venice of the Pacific, and it's not so difficult to see why. However, its traditional name was Son Long Lang, Reef of Heaven, according to Gene Ashby in his book Pohnpei, An Island Argosy. The total area of the enclosure is 75 hectares. The foundation of the islet is built with a huge basalt boulder on which walled enclosures were built using columnar basalt in a header and stretcher pattern. The walls are as high as 15 meters and up to 5 meters thick. Each stone weighs 5 tons, with some weighing as much as 50 tons. It is estimated that the total weight of the columnar basalt that makes up the entire city construction is up to 750,000 metric tons, and each wall is built the same way a log cabin is built. What is even more fascinating is how the builders managed to accomplish the task without pulleys, levers, or even metals to help aid the process. In modern times, carbon dating conducted on the stone megaliths at the site suggests that Nan Madol's construction started at about 1180 AD, which led to the conclusion that Nan Madol was built by the settler dynasty which ruled the island at the time. Following the theory, when the settlers were overthrown in 1600, the site was abandoned, leaving the mysterious ruins as they remain to this day. But an additional study done at the site reveals that the earliest settlement on the island dates well beyond 1180 AD to the 2nd century BC, or maybe even beyond. Perhaps the Nan Madol predates the settler dynasty several centuries. If Nan Madol was indeed built 1,000 years ago by the settler dynasty, a question arises. How did they do it? First, there is no probable quarry in the immediate vicinity of the island. Even though the potential construction-used quarry sites have been located, the stone's original places of origin remains unknown. That means the enormous basalt stones that were used for Nan Madol were transported there from somewhere else. But the question is how they were transported to the island, because the island of Pohnpei is too rugged to get stones across. That means that whether the Nan Madol builders got stone from the island or another small island somewhere else in the area, it would have to have been floated to them across the ocean to the site. This seems impossible, as each stone weighs about 50 tons. The floating theory was tested by the Discovery Channel, but the 5-ton stone they used caused the raft to sink, ruling out that possibility. So how exactly did the large stones get transported to the island during a time when there were no pulleys, levers, or even metals? But ignore that fact. Let's say they got the stones on the island by rafts or an unknown method that does not provide an answer as to how the stones were lifted. The legend of Nan Madol told by the Pohnpeians might be able to provide answers to these questions. The Pohnpeians say that the construction of Nan Madol began with the arrival of twin sorcerers Alashipa and Alasofa from the mythical Western Katao. The twins were said to be way taller than the average native Pohnpeians. The brothers sought out a place to build an altar to worship their god, Nanasan Sapu, who was the god of agriculture. The two sorcerers built an altar at Nan Madol, where they performed rituals to summon a dragon into the air to assist them in lifting heavy stones. Alasofa took over as the first settler after Alasifa passed away from old age. This tale of the brother sorcerers tells a tale of conquest, civilization building, and dynastic rule explained through a dramatic myth. A closer look at the story, specifically the ability of the brothers Olasifa and Olosofa to levitate huge stones weighing up to 50 tons into the air using some sort of magic, suggests that it may have not been magic at all. Is it possible that the tale is in fact folklore about a long-forgotten technology rather than a myth? But what kind of prehistoric technology allowed people to hoist massive stones into the air? Is it possible that the alleged magic ritual that was performed was simply what is today known as acoustic levitation, which is described as a technique of raising heavy stones by matching the sound frequency of matter, which would render it weightlessness and move it in place? Judging from the megalithic sites all over the world, from Stonehenge to the pyramids of Giza, it is safe to say that the ancients probably mastered the art of levitism, maybe through sonics or some other obscure methods. But could acoustic levitation have been used in the construction of Nan Madol? Could it have been something to do with the legend of ancient people stacking tons of stones and being brothers with magical abilities? Or maybe there's another explanation for Nan Madol. It was said that the brothers who built Nan Madol were taller than the average Pohnpeian. What if they were giants? Could this explain how the stones were moved? But one thing is for sure, this is not the first time giants have been linked to Nan Madol. After World War I, when the Japanese took over Pohnpei, they discovered that the structure above the water was only a piece of the puzzle. They realized that Nan Madol extended further out into the ocean and beneath the waves, that it was an entire sunken city. It was there that the Japanese were said to have found huge platinum coffins on the ocean floor. The intriguing thing was that when they decided to bring the coffins to the surface, they found the skeletal remains of giant humans standing 10 feet tall inside them. So could this be true? These discoveries are intriguing because they demonstrate that other giant skeletons have been discovered all over the world, contradicting the Nan Madol legend, which claimed that a giant race of giants once lived in antiquity. So could the existence of giants in the distant past be an explanation for Nan Madol? It could sound impossible, but several records and facts have established that ancient giants were in fact real. Nan Madol is only a piece of an amazing ancient city long lost beneath the ocean waves. And this lines up with the Pohnpeian legend of another kingdom under the ocean off the shores of Nan Madol. As for if Nan Madol is a piece of an amazing city that is still undiscovered, we will not know until the underground city is properly explored to look for evidence connecting Nan Madol to it. Whether Nan Madol was built by a giant or not, we can never say. But one thing is for sure, prehistoric architecture is beyond anything we could have fathomed. Tell me, what are your thoughts? Leave them in the comments below.